When one chooses to walk the way of the Mandalore, you are both hunter and prey.
Hey there, YouTube world. Matt Schwartz here, TheWeldingGeek. On this episode of TheWeldingGeek, yeah, you saw it. Yeah, that's right. I made the armorer's helmet out of aluminum. This build was a struggle, but I won. I won the war. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It was a lot of work, a lot of pain, but in the end, I feel like I conquered. So enjoy the video. Alright, here I am. I'm going to get started getting stuff cut out. I have my trusty templates here. This is not the start of the build. These templates actually probably took me about 2 weeks to fine-tune and get them ready to where I was comfortable pasting them on some aluminum and getting them cut out. So I'm going to get these all glued down here. Actually get the piece of aluminum cut apart a little bit so I could access to shear the straight lines, and I'm going to get these things sheared out and cut out on the bandsaw. Now that I have everything kind of rough cut out here, I'm going to make my way over here to the hydraulic shear, and I'm going to shear everything out, kind of a rough cut, and then I'm going to shear all the straight lines. Now that I have all the straight lines sheared out, I'm going to make my way over to the bandsaw and do all the finesse work with the bandsaw here, the curves, the pieces that I couldn't just straight shear with the hydraulic shear. Alright, next up here, as you can see, I have all these little circles drawn into my templates. These are here so I can center punch each of those holes, and I'm going to use the rotary index punch to nibble out all these curves because I can't reach this stuff with the bandsaw. Now I'm going to use each of those center punch marks, and with my rotary index punch I'm going to punch all these little holes out. Alright, now that I have all my little ellipses taken out here for the eyes, I'm going to go in here and file off all these little nibs in here with a set of files. Just an FYI, when you're using files typically only cut on the downstroke. They do not cut on the upstroke. So when you're filing, what you want to try to do is push hard on the downstroke and then just come up light on the upstroke. Or if you want to really protect your files, just file down hard on your downstroke, take it up, pick it back out, and then down again. I like to go a little quicker, so I'll just go down hard on the downstroke and then come up soft on the upstroke so you can file pretty quickly. So a lot of people don't know that files only work one way. Alright, the next thing I'm going to do here is go in with my cutoff wheel and just score the lines where the T-visor is going to get cut out later. I'm just doing this because I don't want to cut it out now because I still have to form it and I want the centerpiece in here for support. So I'm just scoring it so I can form my piece and so I can take the plastic off, and then later I'll come in and finish those cuts in there. Alright, what I'm doing here is I'm going to put a set of steps in my pieces here. Actually, this crown piece that I'm working on right now, I'm actually going to end up cutting off later because it didn't work out the way I wanted to. But what I'm doing is there's a set of dies here that puts a little offset, a little kick in it. And this is just for some features of the helmet and also some places for stuff to line up. So that's what I'm doing here. Alright, what I'm going to be doing here is putting in some bends on the hydraulic press. This hydraulic press comes in really handy because it has a bunch of different sets of dies where you can get bends in really tight spaces. Unlike the apron brake where you have one flat plane, this allows you to get some really hard bends in. I overbent these a little bit, so I'm going to use my flange pliers here just to take a little bit bend out and get it to fit up just right. Alright, I'm going to put a little curve in the front faceplate here. These things I keep on showing, these are templates that I made to try to get me close to a shape. I'm trying to bend all my pieces to these radiuses here, as you can see. It's just a template. It's not part of the helmet. Alright, I got my little offset in the cheek there for that front cheek part. Now I'm going to make my way back over to the hydraulic press and bend these into shape. These are little complicated cheek parts, so this hydraulic brake comes in really handy. So I'm just going to put a little kick there and use my flange pliers to bend it the rest of the way to get this all to line up and then form it using my hands. And you see how when you spend your time doing your templates right, stuff lines up when you get to the real material. So really take your time on those templates, guys. Alright, now that I got my cheek tacked up here, I'm going to go ahead and TIG weld it. I'm using a millet welder. I'm using a 4043 filling rod, 16th inch tungsten, and just using my foot pulse method that I love using. And then I'm going to go ahead and get the cheeks tacked into the faceplate here. Alright, back to the hydraulic press. A lot of bends in this thing. This is the inner skin of the helmet. I am bending a couple of legs on here that I'm going to use the shrinker and stretcher to stretch out to form the back of the helmet here for these little flared out things that are on the helmet. And once I'm done with that, I'm going to make my way over to the bench, and I'm going to use an old gas canister, or argon canister I should say, to form the front of this, since I can't fit it in my slip roller with this long tang that I'm going to cut off later. But right now I didn't know that, so I'm going to go ahead and form this just by hand, just pressing down hard. I'm going to make my way over to the shrinker stretcher and form the back section of the inner skin of the helmet. As you can see, I'm using the stretcher part here and a little bit of elbow grease just to get these things to form around where I want them to go. You should be careful when you're doing this, especially when you're pressing down on your leg. You can buckle the material, you can actually split it in half. So just be careful when you're doing it. Don't go too hard, otherwise you'll end up ruining your whole piece, and you don't want to do that. Alright, coming up next here, I'm going to get this back seam welded on this inner skin. Then I'm going to go ahead and use my cutoff wheel and cut out the rest of the T-visor on the faceplate. And then I'm going to get the faceplate tacked on. And then we should be ready to rock and roll, do some TIG welding. I just kind of was thinking, you might be thinking to yourself, why did he do this in 2 layers? And the reason is on this helmet, she has a chamfered T-visor. It's called a chamfer. It's not just a straight cut in. It's very, so it looks really thick. So I did it in 2 layers on purpose here, so I could get that cool chamfer look in the T-visor area. So that's why I did it with the 2 layers. It's because I didn't want to make it out of 1/8 inch thick material. There's a lot of different features you can see with the front faceplate. So I did it in 2 layers. Alright, I got everything tacked up now. Now it's time to get welding. Here we go. now that we've just spent all that time putting all those pretty welds on this helmet, I'm going to spend a heck of a lot more time taking them off. Next up here, I'm going to do a bit of metal finishing, dressing off all my welds, trying to smooth it out. I don't have to be super critical on this helmet because this helmet has a lot of texture to it when we get to the painting part. So I'm still going to take my time and try to make it look nice and straight, but I don't have to be as precise like on the Mandalorian helmet on this helmet because of the texture in the helmet. It will hide a lot of the ugly. So I'm going to use all my tools here that I have. An angle head grinder from Milwaukee. The thing is awesome. I'm going to use DA sander, hand sanding, and whatever else I can come up with to get this thing to come out and take the welds off. It takes quite a bit of time, but man, if you can do it right, things will come out looking really nice. Alright, now that I have the bulk of the welds off here, I'm going to go in with some hand sandpaper and just try to straighten some of my lines out, kind of feather everything out by hand, and then I'm going to go ahead and use the cutoff wheel and get the rest of the center section here cut out, and then get those dressed down nice with that nice chamfer all the way around the eyes that she has on her helmet. And yes, folks, I am in love with this Milwaukee angle head grinder. This thing is so handy. You can do your dressing with just a 2-inch or 3-inch roll lock sanding discs. And now I swapped over the head to put the cutoff wheel on there. And man, I really love this thing. Alright, you can see the difference that the hand sanding, it softens everything up a little bit, makes it look a little straighter, a little cleaner, and then when you go ahead and hit it with the sandblaster here, it just makes everything look nice and precise. Alright, it's time to start on the dome. I'm going to go ahead and use my acetylene torch here, using the soot to cover the aluminum, and then I'm going to burn it off with the torch. And what this does is it makes the aluminum soft. It makes it easier to work with. And then when you go and work with it, hammering it, planishing it, it actually hardens it back so it's not soft. But whenever you're working, when you're doing planishing or shaping, annealing is a great process to make your life a lot easier, and it'll make stuff look a lot nicer. now that I have my pieces annealed, you can see how warped and whooped they are, but that's okay. I'm gonna go ahead and start shrinking the outside edges here to get this thing going in the direction that I want to get going, and then use my plastic mallets just to start forming this. And I'll get it moved as far as I think I need to get it so far just to get started, because once you hit it with this hammer, you can see how it really starts to curl over, and you need to planish it after that to get the insides to move even further, otherwise it's just going to keep on curling into a ball. But you'll see the process here as I go through it. And I have all my templates here that I'm going to try to roll these halves in the shape of that. So there's my top center section, I've got my bottom section, and the front section. So now we've moved on to the planishing hammer here, and what this tool is doing is it has a series of dies from 3/4 of an inch radius all the way up to like a 36-inch radius. So you start with the smaller radiuses to really get this metal to squish and move in how you want it to go, and then you start working up from there to, I think I started with the 2-inch tool or die, and then I worked it up to like a 6 or 12-inch depending on what I'm wanting it to look like. So my process for this is anneal it, shrink the edges, hammer it, planish it, and then back over and over and over again until you get it to line up with the templates or whatever it is you're trying to get it to line up with. And you just keep on moving the material until you get it to where you want it to be. Alright, now that I have my halves somewhat shaped here, I'm going to go ahead and use my table and just a pencil, and I'm going to try to flatten out both the bottom edge and the center edge, just for a place to start. And then I'm going to start whittling away on these halves until they match up nice to where I can get them tacked to how I want them to be. These templates really come into play, trying to get everything lined up, get it to the right size so you don't go too small or you're not too big when you try to go put it inside the helmet. So I missed a section where I tacked this thing together. I hit the record button, but I didn't hit it hard enough. But it's just the same thing, the process as tacking the cheeks together. And I'm going to go ahead and try to smooth out the center section before I weld it, just so when you go to weld it and you have it tacked together, sometimes when you hit it with the heat, it will actually crown up and like pinch together really tight, because when you weld something, when it cools, it draws together. So I'm just going to planish this out nice and flat to start before I weld it, just to make it a little nicer, and then I'll do it again after I get it welded. So the process here I'm using is hydro-oxy welding. It's using hydrogen gas and oxygen gas to gas weld these two halves together. And the reason why I use this gas weld is because it's a way better weld to planish. It just forms a lot easier. It's a nice pliable welded seam using 1100 rod. It's almost pure aluminum. It just makes a really nice workable seam, and that's why I gas weld this seam. Alright, now that I'm done welding, I'm gonna, like I said, gonna hit it back over with the planishing hammer just to flatten the weld out and smooth out this top section, because it still will kind of draw together, not peak that bad if you planish it first. Alright, now that I have my dome done, it's time to get it welded inside the helmet. So that's what I'm gonna do here, get it all tacked up, centered up, and then get it welded into place. Alright, now that I have it welded, I'm going to use a plastic mallet and a dolly to really make this tight edge seam tight. You don't want to use a metal hammer, because if you use a metal hammer and a dolly, it's just like the planishing hammer. It will smash it and form it bigger. I don't want that. I just want to move the metal. So I'm going to use this plastic mallet that won't mar the metal, won't coin it, and it will just put this top seam nice and tight against that dome. Alright, time to work on the center section, the center crown section, and I have what you saw before, those steps rolled in it, and now I'm just gonna add this extra section to the sides it's hard to explain, but I'm just adding 2 extra sections to the sides that are there. I'm tacking it into place, and then I'll get it welded and tacked into place on the helmet. Alright, how I'm actually going to attach this center section is I'm going to drill a couple 1/2-inch holes in the top and just tack it from the back side so you can't see any welds into it. I'm using a 1/2-inch rotor broach tool with a center section or a center hole drilled first, and then pop the holes, and then I'll clamp it into place and this go in from the inside and tack it with the TIG welder. And boom, just like that, I got my center section tacked on. Alright, time for the ear caps. I'm going to use some 1/2-inch chunks of aluminum here. Hit them with the bandsaw to get the radiuses in there. You can see I have my templates drawn up. I just didn't show all this. You've already seen all that. So I'm going to get this stuff cut out, ground out, welded together. Kind of hard to explain, but you'll see as I go here. I'll try to explain exactly what's going on. Alright, step 2 here is I've chamfered the inside edges here, and I'm actually going to put a weld in there. These two pieces get welded together. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm also going to build up a layer of weld on the bottom side that's going to be my little chamfer section of the ear cap, and this will all make sense here in a minute. Alright, so I got my pieces here welded together, as you can see. You can see the build-up weld on the bottom. I'm going to use a belt sander here, and I'm going to start kind of carving, shaping, getting this piece, getting the welds dressed off, and getting it into the shape of the ear cap, the top ear cap section. Alright, and this is the rough cutout first. Gotta ground out on the bottom section of the ear, tapered to fit, and they'll fit together like that when I get them on the helmet. Alright, now I'm going to use my angle head grinder to really fine tune these ear caps to make them make the lines look more clean and sharp, and just to dress them out to make them look nicer. Alright, next up here you can see I sheared out a piece of 1/2-inch aluminum strip, and I just clamped this down on here and just using my hands to form this little step out that the ear cap has. I'm going to go ahead and use a pair of snips, snip off the extra sections off the back, and weld it on the back side into place. Alright, we're going to step away from the ear caps here for a minute, and I'm going to go ahead and put in the horns. And how I decided to do this is I laid it out here with the tape measure and the calipers, and how I decided to put the horns on was just to build up a bunch of weld on top. And I'm pretty happy with how this came out. The center 3 horns, I just built them up completely with the weld, and the 2 larger horns on the outsides, I decided to use a piece of aluminum tube as a not a template, but like as a direction. I get them tacked into place and just build around them so I can get them going in the direction that I want to go. And you'll see me do that here, better shown than explained. Alright, so that's the center 3. Now, like I said, I'm going to take an aluminum tube and tack it into place to give me a direction to weld to. And I'll show you how I went about doing that here. And alright, I feel like it came out pretty good. Not perfect, but for building up a bunch of weld, I'm really happy with how that came out. Alright, we're going to jump back to the ear caps here. I'm going to go ahead and cut out this little section here so I can get the ear cap a little more inset instead of just stacking it right on top of there. So I'm going to use my cutoff wheel here and get the hole punched in the side of the helmet, and I'm actually going to tack it from the back side and weld it into place that way. And alright, just like that, I got the top section tacked into place. I'm going to go ahead and do the bottom section here, kind of the same way. Pop a hole through it, get it clamped into place, and get it tacked on. Alright, now we have this all tacked into place. We've got one more piece to put on the ear cap, a little filler panel piece that goes around the top, and I'll show you how I went about doing that here. I just used a piece of 1/8 inch aluminum, and I'm going to bend it around a couple different around the top of it, try and use my fingers around a dolly, and then I'm going to fine tune it with the angle head grinder just to get it to fit the little contours of the helmet, and then tack it into place. Alright, and that's the ear cap. I'll rinse and repeat that off camera here for the other side. And now it's time to move on to the rear vent piece. I've got my pieces already cut out here. Same type of process, templates, glue the templates down. Use the rotary index punch to punch out the little square sections in the middle. Get the little lips bent. I'll go ahead and show you how I went about putting these pieces together. Alright, I'm going to tack into place these 5 little or 6 little sections here on the back of the helmet. They're just kind of an overlapped pattern that falls on the back side. You'll see what I mean here in a minute when I bring it up to the camera, but I'm going to get them tacked into place and welded up. Alright, this is the internal section of the rear vent. I'm going to go ahead and get this tacked into place and then do the outside section of the rear vent. Alright, now I have the last piece here. I'm going to go ahead and shrink the top and bottom of this piece. And this is going to give it that curve that I'm looking for. And I'll trim the legs. I made the legs long here so I could shrink it. And I'll trim most of this leg off. It's just there to give it that crown, that bend. Alright, that's the rear vent. Now it's time to throw some paint on this bad boy. So yeah, I pretty much made up this paint process. I don't know what I'm doing. This first layer here, I decided just to hose it down with some black paint on the underside and use a plastic bag to try to give it some texture. This didn't quite work the way I wanted to, but I mean, it gave it some texture, but not as much texture as I wanted. You'll find it with cosplay. You'll do something on your costume and then you'll see pictures of yourself later and you'll say, man, those details didn't come through. So I'm really going to try to add a lot of texture so you can see it on camera on this helmet, because I love the texture of the armorer's helmet. Right, after I let this dry, I wasn't happy with the amount of texture, so I made this up. I grabbed some, it's like an E6000 glue and some acrylic black paint, and I mixed it together and made this goop. Reason why I mixed the paint in there is because I knew the paint would probably rub off at some point in time, and I didn't want the clear, gluing looking stuff, so I just added the black in there, so if the paint did rub off, it would look black and it'd still look fine. It is kind of a weird viscous stuff that sticks together. So what I end up doing is taking my paintbrush and rolling my paintbrush in it, and just rolling my paintbrush on the helmet, and it just gave it these little spiky, a lot of this texture. It's almost too much, honestly. I may have gone a little overboard on the texture, but I'm actually pretty happy with how it came out. I don't know if you guys can use this process or not, but I feel like it worked out pretty well for adding this bumpy texture to the helmet. Here's kind of a close-up of what this looks like. Just glue and paint, basically. And I just rolled my paintbrush in it like that, and then put it on the helmet and just rolled it across the helmet. Alright, and then I decided to hit it with a shiny gold spray paint. And because I know that when I go and hit it with the black wash and the brown wash, it will make it look bronze. If you start with the bronze and black, and it probably look fine, but I knew that it's going to change the color and the look of this helmet when I black wash it. So I didn't get that on camera, unfortunately, but you'll see the finished product here. Alright, that is the armorer's helmet build. If you guys enjoyed that long video, hopefully I picked some music you could handle and stand. But yeah, this is the kind of content that I'm planning on bringing from now on. Big metal props. Now that I'm done with my Mandalorian build, I probably won't be building a lot of soft parts. I'm not saying never again, but for the next distant future, probably I'm going to start keeping in the shop and making metal parts here. I'm going to start changing some stuff up here. Over the last 6 months or so, however long I've been doing this, I've actually had a lot of people reach out and ask how they can support me. I didn't really know how. So what I've decided to do is start a Patreon page. It's not up yet. So in between this video now, May 4th, 2020, and the next one I post, the next big build video I post, I'm going to try to get that Patreon page set up, and I'm hoping to be able to give those who jump on board some cool stuff. Haven't really decided on my funding tiers yet, but some of the stuff I am kicking around is given are like templates, access to all my templates, some of my templates, that sort of thing, and the different tiers. And the biggest news, I've had a lot of people reach out asking if I do commissions or if I'd sell the Mandalorian helmet especially. I'm sure a lot of people will be wondering about this helmet. This one's actually going to my sister-in-law. I won't be selling these types of helmets. I'm the type of guy that likes to jump into a project. That's where I get my joy, is in the build. And once I've conquered that, it's really hard for me to go back and do it again. I have, but I'm not planning on doing commissions. These builds take so long that I just simply don't have the time to do commissions and do this. And this is where my heart's at right now, is doing videos and sharing what I do, and sharing my art. And so I still want to give people access to the stuff I'm building though. Not everything I make is going to be for myself. I like to start making some other stuff. So what I was thinking of doing is, in one of those Patreon tiers, is giving away the thing that I made in the video. Now this won't delete or negate the giveaways that I've promised to do in my YouTube channel. Like I said, once we hit 25,000 subs, I'm probably giving away another custom Mandalorian helmet, and then I'll have further giveaways there. But I want to start building this Patreon community. The funding from the monetization from YouTube is really not all that much. It's a lot less than what I thought it was going to be, so I'm trying to figure out different ways to where I can get some more funding in so I can continue to do these big projects, because they're expensive to do. So that's kind of exciting news. If you're wanting to be able to get a piece of the art that I'm making, I really want to stress that I feel like I'm an artist. I like making art sculptures. That's not necessarily making a prop over and over again to sell. So that might be one of my tiers too. So between this video and the next video, I'm hoping to get that set up, and then I'll be giving away. I'm not going to give away what I'm building. I'm going to switch genres here. I'm going to get into the video game genre, but I'm building a really cool prop, or planning on it. So you guys can be looking forward to that. I'll do a whole Patreon video explaining what it is I'm doing. I know this is a whole long ending, but I just wanted to get that out there. For those who are interested in supporting me, getting some access to my templates, which I keep on forgetting to tell everybody. I've got my Mandalorian templates, a custom Mando, and the actual Din Djarin metal plates, the first round of those. Those are up on the Welding Geek Facebook group. You can get on there. They're on PDF files, and you can use those if you'd like to do so. They probably work good for people wanting to do foam, Sintra, that kind of stuff. So there are those templates there, but as I go through all these builds, I'm going to start building up this database of templates, and I think I'm going to start giving those away, or not giving them away. If you're supporting me on Patreon, you'll have access to that kind of stuff. At least this is what I'm hoping to do. I don't know if it's going to work out or not. But I'm still hoping to build my YouTube channel, and alongside that with the Patreon thing, building a tight-knit group of just people who are interested in what I'm doing. Thank you guys so much for the time that you've invested in me and my YouTube channel. This has been a blast, and I hope to keep on doing it here in the future. I'm really enjoying it, and I'm learning so much, and I hope you guys are learning too. Once again, guys, my name is Matt Schwartz, and I'm the Welding Geek, and thanks for watching. And I just remembered one thing. My daughter
asked me if she could draw me something. She's 9, and I've been pushing her to draw every day because she's really good at it. And so she's asked me, Daddy, what can I draw for you? And I said, can you draw me the Mandalorian? And so she got on YouTube and found the little step-by-step draw-by-draw, and she drew me this. And I wanted to show it off because I'm really pumped. Look how awesome this is. I just wanted to share that with my peeps because I am a proud daddy with that, and she'll be thrilled that I shared it on here, but that's pretty cool if you ask me. Thanks to whoever it is. I suppose I should have jumped on YouTube and see who the guy is that does this. He draws with his children, but anyway, step by step. How cool is that? Anyway, signing off, guys. Thanks for watching through all that. But yeah, thanks again, guys.